Again, welcome everybody. We're really thrilled to have everybody here, particularly after just right on the heels of our symposium, but we have a great topic and great panelists. So I just want to say thank you for everybody for taking the time out. My name is Joe McGovern. I'm the president of the BD Guild. I know we have Sue Sylvester here. She's a co-founder of the Guild as well with Corgan. So we always like to start out with a fundamental, just reiterating what we're here to do, and that's our mission statement. We think it's very straightforward yet important to reiterate, and that's to be the premier source of education, coaching, and support for the business development profession. So we're really a professional development, training, education-based organization. I will say that we don't lead with the networking, right? We don't lead with project generation and all that, but we think it's a great byproduct. I just must say that, but that's my editorial. Special thank you to our meeting sponsors, Atmosphere Commercial Interiors and Steelcase. I know Laura Davis is on the line. Laura, are you there? Able to say aye? Want to say
I'm
thank
here.
you.
Hi,
All
thanks
right.
for being here.
Yeah, absolutely, Laura. Thank you and everybody over at Atmosphere and Steelcase for your support really from day one of the BD Guild. And I know we have a special presentation for you guys, from you guys. So let us push play and
Hope it works.
go from there. Hang on, everybody.
Oh, so cute.
It's a beautiful day for a ball game and a beautiful day for the BD Guild. Hi, I'm Laura Davis with Atmosphere Commercial Interiors. Most of you remember me as the Badassador, and I want to thank you for letting us play ball as part of the BD Guild team. Just think about how things have changed over the last year. And my role at Atmosphere is to help companies feel excited about getting back into the office. It's also about helping them understand that they can go back to something much better, really. And now, I'd like to pitch it over to Jeff Anderson to tell you a little more about Atmosphere.
Thank you, Laura. Atmosphere Commercial Interiors is proud to be involved with the BD Guild. As one of the largest office furniture dealers in the country, with 8 locations across the United States, we're honored to be involved with the local Arizona business community. During these times, there is nothing more critical to an organization than a dynamic business development plan. Atmosphere Commercial Interiors is committed to helping organizations build a case for place. The office environment has changed since the pandemic, but will still be critical to company culture and growth. Atmosphere can provide the expertise to help companies successfully navigate their return to a better workplace. Now I want to toss it over to Ryan Grody from Steelcase.
Thanks, Jeff. Steelcase is the world's largest provider of quality office, education, and health spaces. And we've had the chance to learn from our clients and colleagues to continuously evolve and create value. As with any business development plan, the ability to communicate how your value will be of benefit to your prospective client is a key to your success. As we continue to live and work through these unprecedented times, the value Steelcase brings is our ability to share our research and insights to design, to make, and deliver quality products that will allow workers, and the workplace to evolve and progress. In the coming days and weeks, we'll help people return to a better workplace, which moves us to a better economy and better days ahead. Thank you for participating in this BD Guild event.
All right. All those in favor, clap their hands. That was awesome. Thank you. Thank you to everybody. That was very creative and I love it. So Laura, thank you once again.
You notice I had the best arm of anyone.
You know,
Just want to say.
And I will say, if anybody has noticed that kind of the cool backgrounds of where they're all if you haven't been to their showroom, I highly suggest it. And Laura, we'll go back anytime you'll have us again. So.
Thank you.
All right. Anyway, well done. Thank you very much. Crystal Keilholz, president of the BD Guild Phoenix. I will say, I want to, if you're able to give us a quick hello, Crystal.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. So my name is Crystal Keilholz. I am the Phoenix chapter of Business Development Guild. Thank you guys for joining us again for yet another bi-monthly membership meeting, of course, virtual. So with this, Joe, can we go to the next slide?
Yep.
We're going to change things up a little bit this month, and I'm actually going to have one of our advisory board members because things are a little bit different in the virtual aspect. Unfortunately, there's not that pre-networking or after networking, so you guys can actually truly meet some of our advisory board members. I'm going to have Denise Alling go through some of the meeting content this month, so you can kind of get to know Denise a little bit and her personality as she goes through our monthly announcements. So I'm going to hand this over to Denise. She is also part of our event committee. So if you're interested in the event committee, please let me know and we can get you signed up with Denise. All right, Denise, take it away.
Thanks, Crystal. Hi, I'm Denise Allen. I'm the Business Development Manager for Solutions AEC. We're a MEP engineering group. And being part of the BD Guild is absolutely helped me. I hope if you haven't been to a meeting before that you enjoy today, and we thank you for being here. It's a great and very affordable organization to be a part of. We have trainings, workshops, symposiums. We have a certification program that ASU supports. I was with first graduating class of that. It was really nice. Great networking. I feel like I made lifelong friends and trusted colleagues in that. Our membership for $299 is a 1+1. So it's yourself, the BD representative, and hopefully someone from your operations side to create that bridge and understanding between the two domains. We have a blog, we have a newsletter, so all sorts of information to help you grow in your profession.
And Denise, if I could chime in regarding our quarterly newsletter, which is coming up here at the end of the month. It is something that we do publish quarterly. It's for members only. We've been talking a lot about over the years about what kind of overhead business development is, right? Because sometimes we kind of are thrown into an overhead category. And a number of us have brought up the vernacular of revenue generating overhead, right? And that's something I think would be really important for us to kind of put in the marketplace. So that'll be a featured article in this upcoming newsletter, is revenue generating overhead, just as a little plug to the newsletter.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I asked Joe before the meeting because I was trying to think when the guild started. I thought it was much longer than just 5 years ago. But it started in Phoenix. Joe and Sue put this great organization together. It has spread to Southern California and Denver. And if you were on the symposium call, I would say it's moving right across the country. We had folks from Atlanta to Kansas and North Carolina. So amazing opportunity for networking and, reaching other national offices. So it's pretty cool how it's growing. Like I mentioned, there is a professional business development course, the PBD. It was what was it? It was the CBD, but then people, so we decided to change that.
Yeah.
This year, a little bit different, product of the times. It's going to be an on-demand, all virtual class. So if you want to do the certification, you can bust it out over a weekend, hopefully not, but you can do it at your time and convenience. So that's going to be a really nice, kind of very convenient option for folks. And Joe, can you speak to some of the networks that will still be available?
Yeah, no, it's the on-demand is something that, like Denise said, is new. And we've heard a number of various feedback from folks. And one of the things we've heard from a few is that with this being on demand, their operations teams that various companies are bringing this to allows them to take the class that before our schedule would just not allow them to do, because they were specific half-day sessions over the course of 6 months, and the operational teams just really didn't have time to do that. So we think this really opens up the universe, so to speak, in the marketplace for people who can take advantage of the content in the program. We do understand, because it's on demand, the interaction that live classes, that's not going to be part of it. So we are adding monthly virtual hangouts, as we're calling that. That is for current and past students and invited instructors, current and past as well. So to get that networking, it will be accessible in Q2. We are in production mode as we speak. So it's something that we are really excited about and looking forward to. And if there are any questions, we'd be happy to answer them. So please feel to reach out or go to the website. Sounds good. So as Denise mentioned, we have any number of events throughout the year, and Crystal as well. And we do have each chapter has bi-monthly events and other individual events. So take a look at the website. Our next one is April 8th. That's the Denver event. And that's going to be, and when we were doing live, we had what we called rotating roundtables, where the groups would go from table to table and the panelists would remain. So you get different perspectives from different people. Denver is going to have that format, albeit virtually. So stay tuned for that. Crystal, do you want to do a quick note about your coffee chat coming up if you're there?
Yeah. So April 21st, I have a special guest with Corgan, Tanya Dooley, going to be joining me. And she's going to be talking about, remember, these are quick hit 30-minute topics. So she's going to be talking about how to master a cover letter for those of you who are involved in writing cover letters. So more information will be coming out soon. So keep an eye out for that. And I look forward to seeing you guys there. And this is a free event, just to remind everybody who hasn't been part of them before in the past.
And this is something that Crystal's kind of paved the way among other things. So anyway, thank you, Crystal. So yeah, check out the website. We have we have workshops coming up. We have meetings really throughout the year. So one thing before we say thank you, and please take the digital survey, because we will send that out tomorrow along with the recording of the program, or the next couple days, because sometimes it takes a little bit of time to download. I want to say thank you to Denise for again stepping up, like probably 2 hours ago. Yeah. For coming. You did the same thing with the virtual symposium. So Denise, thank you.
Sure, happy to.
Yeah. And also a special thank you as always to Carissa Anderson, who is coordinating everything on the back end of these meetings and all the communication and rapid fire information and that Carissa takes care of. So Carissa, thank you as well. Appreciate that. I think Carissa's there. All right, we're gonna have a post-session networking. Anyone who wants to hang out for a while, I'd be happy to. So stick around. And with that, everybody, we will get to the main event. And that is something that I think a lot of us in Phoenix have to deal with when we are branch offices of maybe headquarters based in other markets. And that is selling the firm, but have it locally here in Arizona, but having to use the national portfolio of a company and some of the challenges and opportunities that might bring. So with that, let me bring Chad Schleicher. I'm going to stop sharing now. And he's a senior development manager for White's Contractors, and will be moderating this session. And with that, Chad, he's also a member of our advisory board here in Arizona. Chad, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you. Rock and roll.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Again, my name is Chad Schleicher. I've recently joined the board or the advisory board for BD Guild, and I'm also a senior business development manager. I know a lot of you faces out there, but a lot of you I don't. So hopefully I get a chance to meet you someday or set up a call and talk with you. But really, like Joe indicated, right, is that we live in this great state. We have a lot of opportunity. It just kind of seems to come really from all sectors, right? But this also comes with so much opportunity, but competition. And so many of us have firms that are located here, but a lot of us, you know, Kirk and some of these others that are going to be talking to you have firms that are based elsewhere, but they have a local presence here. And so it really starts to pose this challenging question or opportunity, really, depending on how you look at it, on how do you sell this national resume to a local market? Fortunately, right, we have 3 esteemed guests here with us. And so I'm going to introduce you to them, and then they're going to say a few words about who they are and where they're from and what they do. And then we'll dive into the questions. So Deborah, let's start with you. Deborah Ostreicher.
Thanks, Chad. Really happy to be here. Thank you all for inviting me. If I look familiar, it may be from my 20 years as the assistant director of Sky Harbor Airport. But I also was doing something on the side, which I'm now doing full time since leaving the airport. And that is our company teaches people how to give killer project updates and presentations and win business with killer interviews. So that's something that you need in your company. Let's talk about it.
That's great. Thanks, Deborah. Henry Hill.
Hi, I'm Henry Hill. I'm with HKS Architects. I've been with them for over 20 years. We're headquartered out of Dallas, Texas, but I've spent my career in the LA office, Washington, DC office, and for the last 5 years here in Phoenix. So very familiar with this subject as I've worked my way up through the company, working in multiple markets, but not where the headquarters is, and being able to rely on the network of experts we have within our company to help us not only succeed in delivering work, but succeed in winning the work. So thanks for the opportunity to speak to everyone.
Great. Thank you, Henry. And last but not least, Kirk McClure.
Thanks, Chad. So my name's Kirk McClure, and I've been in the industry just about 20 years, started my career back in Michigan on the civil engineering side, and moved back out here to Arizona, where I went to school at ASU for my undergrad and master's. I just recently joined J.E. Dunn. I don't even think I've hit 90 days yet, so I'm a little bit newer than Chad is at his new role. And but I have also worked in the GC side with some of my competitors at McCarthy and Kitchell, and a lot of people also know me as I previously worked at the Arizona Commerce Authority when they first turned over that from the Department of Commerce. So.
That's great, Kirk. I guess while we're with you, you know, how does J.E. Dunn manage shared relationships on a national basis when that national client is coming into a local market?
So for J.E. Dunn, which obviously every company probably does it a little bit differently, you know, with working at McCarthy, very similar. J.E. Dunn is headquartered in Kansas City, has offices all over the country. When I worked at McCarthy, very similar, companies located in St. Louis, but offices all over. But I think being at both companies, J.E. Dunn does it a little bit differently than McCarthy does. So we have national verticals. And so that would be the first thing that we would probably look at. So in our office or in our company, we have healthcare, mission critical, justice and corrections, and advanced industries. And they are located, a lot of times they're located, their heads are located in Kansas City, but they have folks without on their teams scattered throughout the country. And then we have individuals that are very office focused like myself on Phoenix. So when there's a national client, if they are bringing the client, mission critical is a perfect example. So if they're working on a client that's more likely they're mostly confidential someplace in the country, but they're going to do a data center here, then we'll get a call and we'll start talking about it from our end. If it's the opposite way, where we might find something, for instance, everybody's been chasing TSMC is a perfect example. So that expertise isn't necessarily here, it's in our advanced industries. And so we'll start working with people in other markets and starting to talk about it here. But the primary thing, at least for our office, is making sure that we have some sort of expertise in our local office to bridge that gap. And whether that's the project executive, which we would like to have, or a project manager or superintendent, but there has to be some sort of connection between the national relationship and the local relationship that we can bridge that gap.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. How's that been new to this role, right? I am sure you've kind of adapted quick, but you've also worked with companies in the past that have similarities. Have you seen similarities from prior companies to what J.E. Dunn's doing? Really kind of utilizing their national portfolio?
Sure. Most definitely. Like I said, I haven't even been here 90 days yet, but some of the pursuits that we have talked about, I would say a lot of my experience would come mostly from McCarthy in this similar role. When I worked at Kitchell, Kitchell's not as much of a national contractor, so they can only leverage a couple areas. But like, for instance, in McCarthy, when we were chasing projects at ASU, we would, like on the S&T side or science and technology, we didn't have that experience in-house. So we had to start looking at other offices and other team members in other locations and leveraging their expertise, their resume, and their portfolio. But you cannot, and I think we'll talk about it a little bit during this presentation, some clients do not want that, yeah, that's great that you built it somewhere else in the country, but what is the bridge? What's that piece that you have here? And so, typically that's where we, like I said, we really need to have that local expertise to be able to bridge that gap. And so for instance, even when we did it at McCarthy, it was very similar to what we're doing here for J.E. Dunn. We're doing it currently right now on a healthcare pursuit. So we have a big national healthcare vertical. Most people know J.E. Dunn's a big healthcare builder. So our national vertical is in every market. Mission critical is really big here. So we're starting to see more of our mission critical out of the Midwest start to venture and taking a look at opportunities here in this market. And same thing with the advanced industries. I think TSMC, whether you're going to build the fab or all of the ancillary buildings, it's generating a lot of activity here, which is obviously heightening up our advanced industries folks. And we do have expertise here locally. So those kind of conversations are already starting to happen.
Yeah, thank you. Henry, let's go over to you. So how does your business manage expectations on proposals when there is an expectation that your company has experience in a specific market sector at the local level, but only have a national portfolio?
Well, I mean, we've approached this pretty consistently. I would say it's what's interesting is our approach to this, which is really being upfront about how we are organizing our staff and utilizing those expertise like Kirk was talking about, and maybe sitting in other markets, but have the good experience, but needing to have that strong local team. And that needs to be, you have to have good leadership for delivering, and also the relationships, because those relationships are going to be critical, whether they're with the city or they potentially are with the client or other people within the industry. And that really helps to give you validity as you're going about this. But we really pride ourselves in making sure that we're very direct with our clients, our proposals about how we're going to structure this. And truthfully, after this last year, with so much of how we deliver being just like we're doing here, a bunch of faces and boxes, we're all local and we're all national. I mean, it really has given us a little bit of an advantage because we were organized this way anyway, where even though we are set into our sectors and our markets, HKS has worked for the entire 20 years I've been here, I've been with the company, as a single checkbook. So we don't have offices competing against each other. We don't have sectors competing against each other. And that allows us a lot more flexibility, which has been very useful. And when you can make sure that your experts, whether they're a lab planner or they're a hotel designer or they're an ED planner, don't have to be set in every single office, and you can really utilize them across your entire company. It lets you make sure you can focus on making sure that they're inserted at just the right time to keep everything going. But for that to work, we have a set process for how we deliver projects, and the PMs and our project architects all understand that and get cross-trained across different project types, which really helps with that. But I think there's another part to your question, which is it's not just managing the expectations of the client and selling them and convincing them this is what we can do. We have to manage that expectation internally as well. And so we have a very specific go, no go process that the sector gets involved in. And usually there's, they have to get buy-in up and down the sector chain. And once you do, then you set the expectations. Who's going to champion this? How are we going to go after it? How are we leveraging those relationships and advantages we have within that local market to come with an approach that's going to work? And that sort of level sets everyone, aligns us on what the expectations are. So, we've been pretty successful with it, with moving into different markets and different, and introducing new sectors to it. And I've seen that in our DC office, and I continue to see it here in our Phoenix office.
Yeah, that's good. I was just thinking about your guys' company being who they are, great big name. You guys are all over. And you're strong here as well. When you have that national expertise, or let's just say it's a go, no go, like you said, and it's within a certain vertical, how do you manage the proposal? I assume the local office is kind of the lead, but then do you guys have a national marketing group that kind of feeds some of that content, or how does that play out?
So it honestly depends on the project. I think, Kirk alluded to, sometimes these projects come through a national relationship. And it could be someone, for example, we've done work here with Lincoln, I've done work with Lincoln Properties here, back in the DC market. Sometimes you're following them. Sometimes, they're doing something here and someone in a different market hears about it and passes it along. The way that we really handle it is it's choosing that specific champion. And if you have a project of scale, you're going to have a national champion and a local champion for it. We determine very early on who has what responsibility. But then on the marketing support side, we have our local marketing coordinator here, but we also have a national network. And especially when you're talking about something, let's say something specific like aviation, that's something that our marketing person here has worked on a lot, but we have a national marketing coordinator for that. And you bring them in so they can get lessons learned from previous proposals, and they can really help to structure it. And it makes sure that also there's a familiarity to the content as well, which is very helpful.
Yeah. I relate to that well, here at White's and in my past life at Smith Group. Hey, Jeff. All right, so this one's for you. How do you make the transition to giving virtual interviews in this world?
That's a loaded question, Chad. I'll give a couple of ideas, but while I'm doing that, if it's okay with you, I'd like to invite everybody to put whatever they want in the chat or raise their hand now or later, just because everybody on this call knows better what they want to hear about, more than me guessing. So please write something in the chat. We'll keep an eye on that as well. But as far as how do you make that transition to virtual, I certainly wasn't hoping for a pandemic, but it certainly has been keeping me busy, helping everybody turn on a dime, not on the technology side so much, but how to do this in an effective way. Hopefully nobody is still doing full day long seminars anymore and realize that those are pretty harsh. If I had to give just a couple of quick pieces of advice to everybody on the call, again, while I'm waiting to see if there's anything you want to ask me or comment on, I would say I'm coaching a lot of teams across the country on interviewing for work, especially now in this virtual world. And what everyone seems to be missing the most is knowing each other. Because when teams are going after a job, they used to be able to get to know each other better along the course of that RFQ process. And now they don't have that same chance. And so then when you get into that virtual world of trying to give an interview and everybody's in different locations, I think it's coming through even more so. And so a big piece of advice I would give is to see if we could find ways to get to know each other better before that interview process happens. And then also, if there's any way, even if you can't be in the room for the interview itself, to find a way to be together or closer together, even if you can't be in front of the panel, to get the group together so that you're all at least in the same room. I think that helps a lot. Let's see, we have a comment from Denise. Would it be okay, Chad, if Denise talked about this for a minute?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Denise, you
Yeah.
want to jump in here and talk about that?
Oh, I just was answering your request for the don't guess. So just the leveraging the relationships. So I just used JE Dunn as an example. If you know people here, how do you leverage that to your clients' other offices across the country?
Sure, and I think that definitely that's a good one as far as making sure that those, like you said, those relationships are intact, speaking to what Henry was talking about also. So yeah, thanks for that. And yeah, just throw in the chat anything else about virtual. I know we need to move on, but I appreciate that, and thanks for jumping in.
Well, so actually, Deb, I do have a follow-up question on this because it's something that I see or I've seen people struggle with, is that, you know, so much of communication is nonverbal. And so how do you kind of show those extra emphases in a virtual setting?
It's a lot of work. So I would say this, get help, because this is not something that's natural. So, you know, certainly I'm available, but there are a lot of excellent people out there. Well, they're not as excellent as I am, of course, but find a coach, find somebody other than your mother, your brother, your teammate, somebody who can independently help bring that out. I know that people are concerned about everything, like, should I use my hands? Should I not use my hands? And that this camera thing makes it really weird. And so the advice that people give, like, oh, just be yourself, that's not helpful. What does that even mean? So I wish we had time. We spend hours and hours teaching people how to do this well. I wish we had time, Chad, to really go through and talk about all of the ways to do it. But I would say this, the fact that you're asking is the first step. And anybody going into a virtual meeting of any kind, stop and ask yourself, what can I do? What can I take responsibility for to make the people on the other side of that camera interested, engaged, and comfortable? And I think that's a really good start. So thanks for asking that, Chad.
Right. You know, kind of sticking with this interview theme here, Kirk, how do you alter your presentation during an interview to meet some of those local expectations?
So I think it's an interesting question. And what I would say is that depending on kind of what Henry was chatting about, I mean, this is, as you know, and most people that are on this call, relationships go so deep in the business that we're in. And that's the side that the most of the business development professionals bring. And we hope that, you know, that starts to gleam over on the operations side. But when it comes down to presentation, obviously we have a local marketing coordinator. Our office is a little bit interesting in we have a local, then we have a regional, and then we have a national. So her name's Emily. She's got a ton of resources. And if it is something that is driven from our side, you know, Emily's going to lead it, but she's not going to have the national like expertise if it's something like, for instance, some of those verticals that we were talking about earlier, at least for us. So she's going to need that side. Now, all those verticals also have marketing. And to Deb's point, you know, we've all gotten really accustomed to, you know, for a long time, we would have to go get in a conference room or get on the phone or send a text or an email. And now it's like getting on the Zoom call or a Teams call or whatever platform you're on, and it becomes regular place. And so, you know, our marketing teams are working probably better now than they probably have in the past. And so, you know, I think that it doesn't alter too much other than who leads it. And if it is a national client that is going to be in the local market, then we have to have that national expertise lead it. But on the other side of the table is the owners, and they have to have that. That's where that relationship piece and that trust piece comes in, and you have to have that with your owners, or basically you're just selling the piece of paper that says, hey, you know, we did this someplace else in the country.
Henry, is there anything you'd like to kind of add on to this? Again, the question was, how do you alter your presentation during an interview to meet local expectations? And I just figured, you know, since the contracting side spoke, I know that sometimes the architecture side is similar, but maybe have some differences.
Well, I think it's you know, whether we're talking about something that's virtual like this, or we're talking about in person, you need to lead with your strengths. And it can't all be about, oh, we have someone who's sitting in Dallas who can design this and has all the experience. You do need to have the local presence that has the relationships that can explain how this is going to work, because just dropping in and, you know, we'll go with the Black Cape architect who's going to do everything. It hasn't worked my entire career, and I don't expect to start working anytime soon. So every location, every market, there's pride in what, you know, what they are trying to do. There's pride in the people that are there within the industry. And there's also an interest in making sure that the work isn't going somewhere else. And it can't just be that, oh, we've got a couple people here that you'll see once or twice, but otherwise it's all happening somewhere else. So I think really you need to balance and be honest about how you're approaching it. But it really does come to having a strength of local team. And I think one of the things you can look at is, you know, something that we've been successful with. I remember where this happened in one of our projects I worked on in our DC office. You know, we were going after a hotel, a hospitality project. It was with Hines. It's a client that we had national experience with. But, you know, our office hadn't done a hotel or hospitality project of that scale or that level before. And we brought in some of our national people from our Dallas office, from one of our hospitality studios. And, you know, the Hines group knew of them. But we could also talk about the fact that our local group had good relationships and experience with the city, with the building department, but also we'd done multifamily, which we could relate was a similar approach. And really it's that strength of team to deliver says a lot. And the team that has the knowledge of local says a lot. And so you need to explain everyone's roles. You need to be very honest, and you need to show where your strengths are and what you're bringing to the project to give them something that's going to be successful and they're going to be proud of.
Yeah, well said. You know, Henry, kind of sticking with you, what are ways to utilize local manpower and expertise, married that with your national?
Yeah. I think this is going to help me kind of tie together a couple of things that I've talked about, and I've mentioned some of these before. Having those local experts and structuring your delivery for, you know, utilizing them when they're most effective on the project is critical. And you don't want to look like you're bringing resources when you don't need them. The client's going to notice that immediately. But making sure that people who can really have impact on the project are there when they need to be, but utilizing a strong team for the delivery. And HKS has a process for how we deliver projects, and it allows the team to work, you know, be cross-trained especially in our regional offices where they're not much siloed, to be cross-trained across a lot of different project types and sectors. And so there's a process to how we do it. We do strong leadership locally and make sure that we're bringing people up into the project architect, project management roles who know the process and can lead the team, you know, including all the designers and the client, to where we need to go. And then also the ones who are going to hold the relationship with the client and hold the relationship generally with the contractor, who's most of my projects now brought in early, and really make sure that the delivery is happening. Because if the client sees the delivery happening, utilize those national expertise and the national relationships just seems like a natural fit to everything and just part of the process. And so, you know, we just got off a project that we did for ASU where we designed 4 floors of labs for them. And we had experts from our lab planning studio in San Diego who flew out multiple times and put together the layout for them. We had experts on, you know, chose our consultants specifically so they would have good experts that could really support them. And, you know, when they needed to come into town, we brought them in because it was pre-COVID for the most part. But, you know, that's utilize them when they needed to be there. But then the production happened out of our local office to actually put the documents together. So it's just balancing between that local strength of delivery, local knowledge of how to work through the system with bringing the experts in at just the right time.
Yeah, I know what building you're talking about. It's beautiful. Deb, going back to the owner perspective, what advice can you give a company that is submitting on a local project but using a national portfolio?
Well, I couldn't agree more with everything that Henry just said, because it's just so critical to have those boots on the ground locally. I would only add to it, and I'm sure that Henry and Kirk would agree, the action that takes place in the local community. Certainly getting involved in the community isn't going to win work. I'm not trying to suggest that's the case, but I wouldn't be truthful if I didn't say I think it makes a difference, because I've seen over the time that, you know, when I sat in the owner's chair, you see companies that are fully integrated into the community, and, you know, on the polar opposite, not at all. But then somewhere in there, there's there's a big project coming up. Let's swoop in and get involved in the community. I think looking at the long game is probably a better approach, because all things being equal, and I know everybody on this call has to know this, but I'm just going to say it anyway, that all things being equal, you've got, as Henry was just saying, this virtual stranger who we're not too sure about, and this other company who's been active and they've been here and we feel comfortable and we kind of feel like we know them and we know they can both do the job. Where do we feel more comfortable? And I think that, yeah, there are panels and there's all kinds of other things involved, but that not just local presence, like Henry said, but really getting in there and getting involved so that presence is very deep. I think that makes a big difference.
To follow up on that, what level of involvement really makes a difference? I guess what I mean is, like you said, you can get in right as the project's coming, right? And then it's very obvious what you're trying to do. But let's just say you see ahead of, on a CIP plan or something, 5 years out, there's going to be a new healthcare facility, right? Or a new public works facility or whatever. At what level does it make sense to kind of invest time, invest money? Or is it just kind of a touch and feel type thing?
Well, I think that's probably a deeper conversation. We could probably do a whole session just on that, but you know what I mean, as far as polar opposite of swooping in and you know, now it's harder, right? With the pandemic, you can't come in and sponsor a luncheon and have 1,000 people at a chamber see your name up there, right? Because that's just it's not happening in the same way. But I do really believe in the long game. And I think we've all seen that play out in at least the Phoenix Metro community, where you've got companies who are maybe, you know, going for this, going for that. It wasn't happening. And then suddenly it is happening. And whether it's because they took on some smaller projects that maybe weren't really what they were after, but that gave them that community relationship as well as getting involved. And then by the time, as you said, 5 years down the line, you know, the big guns are coming out. I do think there's no answer I'm going to be able to give you, of course, nor am I the authority on it of when do you start. But I think just keeping the long game in mind and saying, is this a community that we really want to get involved in, whether it's Denver or somewhere in Southern California, wherever it is, we're going to get in here for the long haul. And that's when you make the decision that regardless of when it's coming up 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, this is a community we're getting involved in and we're going to allocate the resources to do so. And I think that it does come back to you.
Yeah, I like that. This is going
Hey,
to
Chad.
Kurt, yeah, go ahead.
Real quick, I just want to add to that because, you know, I remember when Deb was at Sky Harbor and I did the support Sky Harbor type of stuff that she's talking about. And, you know, she was able, you know, she's working for an institution, being the airport, that has the product or the projects coming out, and they're in our community, and there are avenues to support in that long game. And we all see it for probably the bigger type clients. Sky Harbor Airport's a perfect example. Arizona State University, or any of the universities for that matter. Some of the healthcare institutions like Banner or Honor Health that are, you know, constantly building. They're always here. And so I think that's why I said at the beginning, it depends on how you're utilizing the national piece. So in Deb's instance, when she was on the owner's side, she's seeing, you know, they come out with a new terminal project or something like that. She's seeing folks come from the East Coast and the Midwest and everywhere else and trying to throw the kitchen sink at it. And then you have, you know, local companies that have that expertise that have been in there, that have been doing the long game, and you start to have this competingness from that. On the flip side of it, you know, some of our companies, J-Dunn being one of those, some of the owners are coming to the Valley, and they don't have, so like from a long game perspective, they don't care, and they don't care if you're invested in the community. And that's where they're kind of bringing, you know, hopefully bringing us with them as they, you know, start to do projects across the country. Mission Critical is a perfect example. You know, they're going to go from Arizona to Northern California to somewhere in the Midwest to Texas to, you know, Virginia or whatever. And some of those same clients are moving across the country. So it's a little bit different of a conversation, but I agree with Deb wholeheartedly. If there is something here, you have to really start to push on that long game 100%. But it does look completely different depending on how you're leveraging the national side of the company.
Yeah, thanks for that addition. Let's go to the audience. So one of the audience's questions was, this is probably for Kirk and Henry, and Deb, you can jump in too if you want. How do you manage travel expenses with the client?
I'll go ahead and jump in on this one. You know, again, as we, you know, when we are successful and we win the work, part of that explanation, negotiation, discussion at the front end is, with this approach, here are the planned number of trips, here's the expectation for expenses. Most of my career has been spent working with developers who are very much looking at what is every single dollar I'm going to be spending on this. And I've had some who said, here's your flat rate. I'm going to give you so much % of your fee, and that's going to be for expenses. And I've had ones who said, no, I want to see every single thing, and here's where your limits are going to be. But if you talk to them ahead of time, you make sure that there's a reasonable amount for expected number of trips, and you're open with them and tell them, you know, set your scope. It's all about communication. A lot of this just comes down to very good, strong communication, and it's part of the relationship building, especially if you haven't worked with that client before. Set those honest goals and honest expectations at the beginning.
Yeah. Kurt, do you want to add on to this, or?
No, I think Henry nailed it. I mean, and that's pretty, I would say, customary across the board. We probably all go through it. I think where maybe the question is also driving is the pre-sale side, you know, before the project is won. And that's where you're starting to eat the cost. And depending on what your client is, if it's a private client and you have a project in Dallas that you're going to do something similar here in Phoenix, it's not hard to get them on an airplane, take them over, show them your project, give them a little tour, whatever it is. The challenge starts to become when you have a public client and you can't do that as easily. It's a little bit of, advantageous for all of us now, or maybe a little bit more beneficial to all of us, is that now we've gone to this virtual environment and that we can leverage that. But at the end of the day, sometimes those clients, they need to see it. And again, that goes back to the relationship. If you have really good relationships with that potential client, and you've been working that, we'll call it that long game that Deb was talking about, it's, sometimes they're getting ready to do a project that is of substantial cost, and they want to see those projects. I mean, for instance, ASU is a perfect example. When that hockey arena, where we've been talking about this thing for they've been talking about it since I was at McCarthy. So, I mean, it's been a while, and ASU definitely went and looked at the arena in Pittsburgh. They went and looked at the one in Wisconsin. They went and looked at the one in Michigan, right? Like, they were making tours to see what was best for them. If it's right for them, they're gonna put that money in there, and it's convincing them to get to do that. But to Henry's point, the other side of it is pretty standard, I would think. So.
Okay, no, I love it. All right, so last question, and this is from Joe, and I love it because I think I'm experiencing it right now, but I think a lot of people do, is what is an effective way to communicate to out-of-state headquarters on the nuances of the Arizona market? So, right, we have seen many headquarters need that knowledge, but sometimes they don't always accept those differences. I mean, just from a personal standpoint, I think, as an example, K through 12 is a perfect example. Our K through 12 market is niche and has certain players, and whether White's has that experience in Florida or Iowa, I don't think it really matters here. But how do you kind of effectively tell corporate that? So open it up to anyone.
So I'll jump in there, Chad, and I'll let the others. And this is me putting back on my Arizona Commerce Authority economic development hat. So I think I'm answering what Joe's looking for, but the one thing that the state has always struggled with is getting the headquarters to locate to Arizona. Most of them have a headquarters in somewhere up in the Bay Area or somewhere in California, or maybe it's on the East Coast in New York, and they want that address. They'll move all sorts of their operations here, but they want to keep that headquarters address wherever it is. And but that's where the great work of GPEC and ACA are really helping all of us in starting to leverage all the assets that the state has. And obviously, we have great business climate, we have great taxes, we have great labor force, we have great education. You mentioned K-12, so there's it's being able to have those very similar conversations when you're talking to headquarters about locating projects here. But it's always been a challenge. I think it's now getting a little bit better, and I think any one of us that's been a part of some of the GPEC conversations and stuff like that, we're starting to see more headquarters here, and so that's really exciting to see that companies are finally recognizing that Phoenix is one of the largest cities, metropolitan cities in the country, and we do have all of those assets to offer. So, and I don't know if that's really where Joe is going, but I think that kind of dovetails into maybe what you were talking about on the K-12 side too.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I had kind of taken Joe's question to be, let's just say you're headquartered in Dallas, and Dallas has a ton of science and tech experience, but the Phoenix office does not have that experience, and it's hard to break in. How do you tell Dallas that it's hard to break in without them realizing? Right?
As you're talking about Dallas, I'll jump in on this one. I think if you're national, whether it's your headquarters or it's the head of your sector, and they really want to do a project here they've heard about, if they're not listening to the national, to the local personnel, local leader, and tell them, Okay, this is how you need to work with the building department. Okay, this is how the zoning is going to work. Oh, you need to have this relationship. Then your chance of success goes down greatly. I mean, you have to have that give and take. That it's, I think, as I started off in one of my earlier points, having that local relationship, having that local knowledge is critical. If you don't have that, if the national expertise is how you're hoping to win the work. So if those people that are the national experts, national leads that really want to win here, they've got to be listening. Otherwise, it's not going to succeed. So, I mean, we've seen, fortunately, I haven't seen examples of that where we're seeing too much butting of heads between our national group and our local leaders. We've got some very strong-willed people. I think people who know our office here know who I'm talking about. So, but there has to be that mutual respect. There has to be that give and take, and it has to be a team effort to win the work here and to be successful.
I bring it up. I've heard it from any number, from law firms to engineering firms to GC firms, and I think it really goes back to the original relationship and project origination and business origination. Like I'm from Minneapolis, right? So they grew up in Minneapolis. Their clients are Minneapolis based. They went to high school together. They went to college together. So it's really deep rooted, almost generationally, right? Where the business comes in. And then Phoenix is just such a different market to where you're not starting with those deep roots. So even on the ways and means of relationship development, I've talked to so many different folks, and Henry, I applaud your company if you guys have that respect back and forth, because that puts you in a great advantage. But I've just had so many, and I had my own experiences, and I've had a lot of these conversations where, you know what, when you hear the words, it's different in Phoenix. Relationship is different in Phoenix. It's networking, it's social, it's different than the type of relationship development than my old HQ in Minneapolis, right? And it can be a hard conversation. Or not necessarily a hard conversation. It's hard to get through sometimes, to say, okay, we have to do things a little bit differently because of the nuances of that marketplace. And sometimes it's hard to articulate because they say, well, we are relationship based too, right? That's what we do. And anyway, long-winded, but.
No, I completely agree.
Well, let me just throw this out then. Henry, maybe if I could be pointed to, because you guys have a good interaction back and forth. From those folks who are having a little bit of those challenges, are there any kind of tips and tricks that you would suggest of ways to reach out and to get that message through to an out-of-state HQ? They may not necessarily be listening and really hearing you as much as what we are hoping, just in terms of how the nuances of the local market is different.
Well, okay, and I'm going to speak specific from the architect's point of view. So this is, we'll take this example and do with it as you please. The project that I referenced before, the Wexford project, there are very specific relationship items that were happening here, especially with the city. And I will give credit to Wexford. They brought us in from a prior relationship. That was very cool. They knew enough about the relationship between ASU, the agreement they were getting into, and also City of Phoenix for that piece of land, that it was going to be very thorny and very challenging. They went to the PIC out of our Dallas office. He came out here, we met, and I think it was that of actually being on the ground and seeing what was going to have to happen with that relationship for him to say, no, I get it. Okay, local team, you are going to manage the part components of this that have to deal with the city. He effectively wiped his hands of it, which was the right answer. I mean, he stayed involved, but he did not try to take the lead on it. He did not try to say, well, in Dallas, we just do this. It was because it's a whole different thing. The way that everything was set up with that relationship was different. So, based on that example, sometimes you almost just have to bring them out and show them. That may just be difficult right now, obviously, but it may just take that. If you're really hitting a brick wall, But I would be, it's disappointing to think that you'd be hitting that much of a brick wall. But, sometimes I think you're right. If you talk about something that's generational, there might just be that comfort level and to a certain extent, guardrails that, this is how it's worked and it's just what we're going to do. So it may just take really bringing them in, introducing them, showing them around, and really showing that this is how it works.
Henry, I think that's a great point. I mean, going back to my experience of the company that I worked for that was based in Minneapolis, those who did come out absolutely changed their perspective, 100%.
Well,
so,
plus they probably loved the weather and didn't want to.
And they loved it. I mean, they just get that. I mean, because it's the whole part of the package, right? So I think that's a very, very good point. It's a very good point. Bring them out and show them, because those who did, in my own experience, it did help them open their eyes just in terms of how things are different.
Yeah, no, well said. I know we're past time. Joe, do we have any?
Wow. It's a fast-paced hour. Are there any parting shots, as we call it, from the panel or from the audience in terms of any kind of final thoughts in terms of what you heard today or things to kind of take away? Put everybody on the spot. Kirk, I'm going to call on you.
Of course you will. I was just
already called on Henry, so it's your turn, right?
No, I think, this, obviously doing this from my side, but it's great to hear it from even hearing Henry's perspective and some of Deb's insight. I think it's great, and hopefully people that were on that were listening to the panel could pick up some of that. And granted, not every company's in this type of situation that has national and local, but at the end of the day, that the headquartered, now I really understand what the question you were asking. That is kind of one of those that's like that, because generally in that headquarter type situation, it's always, well, I think if you go to Kansas City, the vast majority of projects are built by J.E. Dunn, and they probably don't have to do business development. Their phone rings, they do projects. They're not doing a lot of the sell. That doesn't exist here, and that's why they have to hire people like myself and in other markets. So, but to me, even being in the middle of this, there was still some insightful information on the other side. So I hope everybody got a piece, something to take home out of it. And anybody has any further questions, you can shoot me a message or whatever. I'm happy to discuss on that side too.
Yeah.
And I hate to do this, Deborah, because I just have to round out the passive aggressive approach. This is just more of a question for you, Deborah. What's the adjustment going from the airport now to your own entrepreneurial business? I mean, that's a pretty neat adjustment. So how would you have to explain what that adjustment is that you've had to experience?
It's not fair in a pandemic, right? I mean, it was going to be a whole different thing. I've actually, as I mentioned, I've been doing this for many years, nights, weekends, and vacation time. Now I don't have to use only nights, weekends, and vacation time, but you all know, owning your own business, that means that now I'm doing it 60 hours a week instead of 23 hours a week. But if I could just add in, along with my thanks, I know that you all in business development, you know how to communicate, every interaction is an opportunity. I just would remind you that every time one of your PMs is giving an update to the client, that's an opportunity to instill confidence and back you up as you continue to go out there. So it's not just about sales and business development, but every client interaction is that next chance to say, we're the company you want to stay with for the next project, or give us a chance on a different project. And so all of that communication matters, not just in the interview. So again, if we can help, let us know. And I've really learned a lot today. Thanks for letting me be a part of this.
And we can send out, and we send out our thank you and our link to our survey and the video, we can send out contact information to each of you if you'd like. So let us know if you'd like to do that. So if you want to get a hold of each person, just let us know. We're happy to do that. So with that, I know that we're at, if there anybody, I know we've had a good chat box going on, but if anybody is brave enough to get on screen and like either ask anything or comment, I promise I will not call anybody out in a passive aggressive way this time. I already did that to the panel, so. Never mind me. But no, let's say a round of applause for our panel and Chad for moderating and for the Phoenix crew to kind of put this together. It was great. So with that, we can be happy to kind of hang out and chat a little bit if you'd like. Panelists, you're more than welcome to stick around. We just want to say a special thank you again to each of you. And stay tuned for our upcoming events and such, particularly, and our PBD program. We're going to be sending out more information about that. But I'll be happy to kind of hang out here and chat with anybody. Anybody want to make introductions to anybody else? I know we have a couple of new people have come on board, which we appreciate. So with that, this is good for our panel. And then now we're on to our post-session networking or post-session discussion. By the way, when we are live, this would be totally a natural onto our appetizers and wine, and everyone would be hanging out. So I tell you what, we're trying to replicate this as best we can. And Denise, one more thank you to yourself for stepping in at the 11th hour once again.